The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of On Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. About every 4 to 6 weeks, we host, as I'm sure most of you know by now, kind of a special segment called Another Viewpoint, and it's just where Melanie and I just kind of talk about different things that are going on, things that are a little upsetting to us, what have you. So we're going to do that tonight.
I can see you're upset.
Well, I have some good things to talk about, and we'll save those for later. I want to get to some of the meat of things first. I guess the first thing is, on one of our more recent shows, about a month or so ago, we had City Manager Dick Wollink. We're not laughing about Dick Wollink, we're just laughing about the whole situation here, because it's a little aggravating, actually. When City Manager Dick Wollink was on, now, I asked him, one of the questions that I asked him was if any of the city council members had come forward with any type of proposed cuts for the upcoming budget. Because obviously they've got to make about $1 million in cuts, and at least that. Now, the reason I asked that was because Deputy Mayor Mark Harris had been quoted in the local paper. It was earlier this year. It was actually back in March or April, as saying something to the effect, and this is what I said on that show. I said that he had said something to the effect that $1 million in cuts could be made without really feeling it. Now, I got a call after that show aired. You're trying to make me laugh here, I know. I got a call after that show from Councilman Harris, and, you know, he said to me that he didn't think that he used the word or words that the cuts could be made easily.
You couldn't remember?
Well, I explained to him that, first of all, I didn't think that I had used the words easily. You know, I truly didn't, and I went back and I looked at the tape, and I did not say that they could be made, that he said that they could be made easily. What I said was that, and I wrote this down, if I can pull my
God
original.
forbid that you would misquote Mr. Harris.
Well, what I had said was that, and I was paraphrasing, that's all I was doing, was I was paraphrasing what had been in the Northwestern, that he said that they could be made without really feeling it. And again, I was paraphrasing. So that's what I told Mark Harris that I had said, was, you know, I said, I never said that you said that they could be made easily. Well, I went back after and, you know, he didn't remember it. He
didn't remember actually saying that he could cut $1 million out of this budget and that there would be no pain, kind of thing.
Well, right. I guess that was the gist of it all. So, in the first place, I was not giving him I was not making a direct quote based, or in other words, I wasn't actually quoting him. I paraphrased him. I have since gone back and I pulled the actual article, and it was more a candidate profile because it was election time, and it actually ran in the newspaper March 18th. At least that's when it was posted on the website. The headline said, Harris, $1 million loss manageable. Well, that kind of indicates that this is something that...
Not problematic.
Right. It starts out by saying Oshkosh wouldn't have as hard a time stomaching the $1 million shared revenue cut likely under Governor Jim Doyle's plan, avoiding cuts to most, if not all, city services, said third-term hopeful city councilor Mark Harris. And then, this is a direct quote, that $1 million is only about 2% of our budget in rough numbers, Harris said.
Yeah.
We probably could continue with all of our services primarily intact.
Really?
Now, again, I will submit, and I'm going to stand by my original comment, Mr. Harris, and the reason being is that, again, I was paraphrasing you, and your direct quote is pretty much the same as what I paraphrased it to be, and that is that these cuts could be made without really feeling them a whole lot. If we're going to be able to leave our services primarily intact, as you were quoted as saying, then that is the same as how I paraphrased it. And I don't want to be like nitpicking here, but I mean, he called me to nitpick about that. And so
He called you because he got his tit in a ringer because you called him out on it. Let's be honest.
well, I didn't call him out on it,
You
Mel.
called
All I-
you drew attention again to the fact.
Well-
See, everybody's been saying, "Oh, the shared revenue is not going to be a big deal." You know, I mean, we've had legislators telling us it's all, you know, chicken little. Shared revenue isn't going to do anything, and everybody stuck their head in the sand. And Mr. Harris, during election time, said, hey, guess what? This isn't going to be really that big of a deal. And what you did is when we had a city manager and mayors on this show telling us that these shared revenue losses are significant to our community and our surrounding communities, and you draw attention to the fact that we have a council member who's saying that it's really not that big of a deal. And
You're paraphrasing
paraphrasing,
again.
well, you could call it whatever you want. Bottom line says that this isn't going to be a problem. This is all manageable. Well, so you got a phone call because first of all, he didn't remember making the statement. Then he had a problem with that that's not really what he said.
Well, he didn't, well, yeah, okay, you're right. But I took this one step further. Because after I pulled this from the Northwestern, and I thought, well, really, what I said was essentially what Mr. Harris said. I just said it in a different way, that's all. Paraphrasing again. So I took it one step further. I called Alex Hummel, who was the reporter who actually wrote the election candidate profile. And I asked him if Mr. Harris had ever called him to challenge the accuracy of this article posted on their website on March 18th. And he thought about it at first because, you know, he writes a lot of articles, as most of us do. And then he actually pulled the article and he said, oh, no. And you know, he had his notes and so forth, I'm assuming. He said, no, he never called. And he said, and I would not have botched a quote that badly. He said he never, ever called. So obviously, Mr. Harris did make that statement. Now, why he is kind of hedging on this a little bit now
It's budget time, baby.
is, well, and back then it was election time,
Yeah.
and this was a very positive piece. It made him look good.
Like he had the finger of the pulse of the budget and he didn't have a clue. You know what, my
Well, I
question...
think Mr. Harris actually, you know, I think really and truly, now that we have the article, you know, I've pulled it and it's right here. I know that no one can zoom in on this closely, but it's on the Northwestern's website for anyone who wants to see, you know, exactly what the article had said and what the precise quotes were. I think that given that, I don't expect to get one, but I think Mr. Harris owes me an apology because he basically...
You're not holding your breath at this particular time,
No, that's
are you?
why I said I don't
Okay.
expect to get one.
Good.
But I think that it is owed to me because I was, in fact, accurate. I never said that I was giving a direct quote, but the meaning is the same.
Welcome to Politics 101.
But I'm not in politics.
No, welcome to his Politics 101.
His politics.
Thou
okay.
shalt not smack around a local politician who speaketh with forked tongue.
I didn't smack him around, though. I simply...
Called him out.
I simply drew attention and asked a question based on something that he had said.
And he proclaimed selective memory.
Yes. Well, one other note about that. Now, this phone call from Mr. Harris came to me on September 14th. I offered him at that time, I said, well, and we talked a little bit about the budget and so forth, and I offered him at that time if he had some ideas about where some potential budget cuts might come or things that he might propose. I said to him, well, why don't you, put that together and send it to me? We'll be happy to put it on the website. That was on September 14th. He told me that, I'd probably have it sometime later in that week. Certainly, I figured I'd have it by the following week. We're taping this on October 9th, and as of tonight's taping, still waiting. So almost a month later, still waiting. My offer still stands. We'll get it on the website if he wants to get something. But I mean, pretty soon the city is going to be.
Someone else will have already made the powerful suggestions and done the tough work. So then Mr. Harris can vote aye along with the majority of the council on those tough decisions. Because see, a person like this who has selective memory about making a comment about $1 million being manageable to lose, $1 million of our money, by the way, taxpayers' money,
right.
to lose $1 million and call it manageable in a budget that is so tight it squeaks already. Let me just ask you something. If we could manageably cut $1 million out of the budget and not affect any level of service, and we really believe that that is plausible according to Mr. Harris.
You should probably explain why you're doing that, and
Because that's a jackass Winnie. That's a jackass Winnie, kind of like Eeyore on Winnie the Pooh. Oh, I stepped in some poo.
And that is why I kind of had the
giggling.
giggles a little bit at the beginning, because
I was pretending to be a jackass, which evidently I don't have to pretend too hard.
And I could see it. and I could see your lips kind of moving a little bit out of the corner of my eye, and the audience wasn't.
I cracked her up. What can I say?
I was not trying to be disrespectful to Mr. Harris or to.
No, you leave that to your sidekick.
Or to Dick Wolink, and there was nothing funny about it other than what was happening
off-screen antics.
Off-screen
back to my point that I'm trying to make here while I'm, animating here. Obviously, I missed my calling. If we really believe that the statement losing $1 million is manageable, our money being taken away, $1 million, don't worry about your services being cut back or losing anyone, fire stations being shut, what have you. If that's really plausible, tell me something. Why in the Sam hell haven't we cut $1 million out of our operating budget? I don't know, how many years has he served? 3 terms?
Yeah, well, he's in his third term now.
Why have we been taxing people on an additional $1 million that we don't have to have?
I'll go you one better. Why, if it's manageable, to quote Mr. Harris accurately, manageable, then why do we have a city manager, other city council members, even former city council members who were at meetings with state representatives, county executives, other city officials, clamoring about the fact, complaining about the fact and clamoring over the fact that the shared revenues were going to be cut? Well, if it's so manageable, why is everyone panicking?
The $1 million, I think the reason that you saw so many people reacting to the talk of shared revenue by a governor who obviously did not have a grasp of local budgeting, and that was Scott McCallum, making statements like the local municipalities are big spenders, who's never really worked with a local budget. I think a lot of our local our legislators at the state level have very little understanding of the services, the costs associated with services, and how we go about setting these budgets and so forth. So when you have an uneducated governor saying things like, we're going to cut shared revenue, and talking about, potentially the city of Oshkosh got like $12 million in shared revenue. They were talking about hacking it in half.
Right.
I mean, you take $6 million out of the operational budget for the city the size of Oshkosh, it is going to have devastating effects. $1 million can have devastating effects.
And that's my point. if it's manageable, according to Mr. Harris.
Why have we been taxing people like you and I on an extra $1 million that we never needed?
Actually, and I guess I will stand corrected right now because the headline says it's manageable. I don't know that Mr. Harris actually said it was manageable in his own words.
He said it was not going to be a problem.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, we could
dig on gnats.
Yeah, I mean, we could beat this up all night long. We could spend just an hour complaining about this. Well, but it's the thing is, everyone, even though we have to cut $1 million and something rather than $6 million and something, everyone seems to be panicking about it. But yet, Mr. Harris thinks that it's.
Would you like me to? I'd like to make a little wager.
Go for it.
That will be manageable because, ladies and gentlemen, what people like Mr. Harris are going to suggest, and I think we've seen inklings of it anyway, is that they'll become very apologetic for having to do this, and oh, poo, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. And what they're going to end up doing is they will end up taking money out of the general fund. Now, what people have to understand is, when I started on the city council, there was like no money in the general fund. And the general fund is emergency money. It is money put aside for cases of crises so that the city can operate, services can continue to be given out, emergency services. And I believe it's like usually 10% of what your operational budget is. There was literally no money in the general fund because there was a philosophy that rather than squirreling this money away, let's let people keep it in their own hands and use that money the way they see fit. The problem with that philosophy is that it put us in a very dangerous financial situation. If there was ever an emergency, there was no contingency. There was no backup plan. There was no kitty drawer, the sock drawer.
Well, everyone has to have a reserve fund of some kind.
But there was not enough money set aside to keep the city operational in any extended period of time. Look at the storms we've had, the thunderstorm that we had, the windstorm that we had.
We've had some hailstorms, and then that huge one, June 11th of 2001.
We would not have been able to operate the level of services and the needed services for our community had the situation existed as it did when I first got on the city council. So keeping that in mind, that those dollars are set aside for operational purposes, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme and we're hoarding it away to buy some, I don't know, Hummer or something. This is really, important contingency money. Now you have people who are in trouble. Our city council is in trouble because we have people who think losing $1 million is manageable. Instead of beating the crap out of the state and taking them to task, we call it manageable because we're all being very polite. So they're going to take that money just like the state did when they developed their hole. They plugged it with tobacco money, money that was supposed to be used.
I was going to say, it's likened to that.
All it is smoke and mirrors. We're going to take it from here and we're going to plug the hole here. So now we've lost $1 million in our general fund. Now, does that mean that the entire $1 million that we're going to lose is going to be taken out of that general fund? No, I'm sure that that's going to be spread around to different departments, but a lion's share of it is going to have to be taken out of the general fund because in order for it not to affect services, we have less people working in the city of Oshkosh now than we did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's irresponsible and it makes good press because, I'm the guy who says all
I'm the good guy. I wear the white hat.
I'm the candy man. I tell you exactly what you want to hear. And if it doesn't quite turn out that way, I'm really sorry. It's bull. It's bull. Yes, do I get over passionate and I start screaming and hooting and hollering? You better believe it, but I'll tell you, before I started talking about shared revenue, the newspaper never talked about it, Greg Underheim never talked about it, the governor never talked about it. This was all a flim-flam job, hoping that the entire public would become literally castrated in a split second because you were too stupid to know what was coming. And you still got people lying to you.
Yeah.
And we cannot allow legislators, either at a local or state level, to find us with our pants down like this. We need to start holding them accountable. And it starts at the top and trickles down locally. And when they start talking that losing $1 million is comme ci, comme ça, doesn't work that way.
Right.
Talk too much.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up
Pardon me.
is the issue of there was a recent article, again, in the Northwestern, about County Board Supervisor Mike Hurt, who, when the article ran, he was going to be heading off with his, I don't know if he's in the National Guard or, I'm not sure.
Reserve unit?
Forgive me, Mike, I don't know offhand, but he's in the military, and his unit was going to be going to Iraq to help them rebuild after the war. And he was going to be gone for possibly up to a year. Now, the article indicated that he intended to, A, hold on to his county board seat while he was gone, and B, before he left, he was going to file his declaration of candidacy papers and seek re-election this coming April when all the county board seats come up for re-election. Now, shortly after this article ran, there was a very small thing in the newspaper. It was, in one of the little side gutters, talking about that he was apparently not now going to be going. The orders are apparently still out there, and at some point they could be enacted. But for now, thankfully for Mr. Hurt's family and for himself, he is here. My problem with this, and I don't want it to seem like I'm attacking Mr. Hurt or that I'm an ungrateful U.S. citizen and not appreciative of his military service, because certainly I am. But my problem here is, how do you, when you have county districts and district representation,
Correct.
where there's only one person per district representing those constituents, I don't know how you serve them or how anyone really serves them if you're out of the country for an indefinite period of time, certainly for months, or, in this case it would be months. And then to seek re-election when you're still out of the country, as he would have been had he left. I don't understand it, and I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. I think personally that if you are doing a good enough job, then give up your seat while you're gone and run for re-election when you come back. County board seats come up for re-election every 2 years. It's not that long to wait before you can throw your hat back in the ring. But one of the comments that Mr. Hurt had made in the paper, he was quoted as saying something to the effect, and here again I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect
That concept gets lost on people sometimes.
well, hopefully it won't get lost on Mr. Hurt as it did on Mr. Harris. He said something to the effect of he hoped that people would vote for him because he's been serving his country and so forth. He said that again something to the effect that it's nice to be able to serve your country and yet still serve your community in another capacity.
But you're really not. I mean, you're not. I understand what you're trying to say, because this is one of those making sure you're politically correct and you don't want to bastardize people who take their commitment to this country seriously, and certainly armed services is one of those. But it's somewhat selfish to want to be able to hang on to that political thing that you find important, even though it means that the very people that you say you care so much about will have no representation.
Correct.
These people deserve your time, your attention, and you can't possibly humanly, physically or mentally or geographically do it.
There's no way to. And the same thing happened with another county board supervisor, Mark Nielsen. He serves, I believe, over on the west side of town is where his district is. Mr. Hurtz is on the south side of town. And he was in Iraq. He was stationed not all that far from Baghdad, as a matter of fact. And he was gone for something like 7 or 8 months. And he is back now, but here again, who was minding the store in his district while he was gone? I don't know how you do that. And not only is your district not having representation, each county board supervisor serves on various committees.
Correct.
Now, those committees are not being served either they're losing your representation, your input, and your knowledge.
A lot of times, and so I think Mark is a good example. I think he's the chairman of the aviation committee.
Yes.
And as you saw, there's an awful lot of things that have come up dealing with the aviation, the airport.
Because we recently taped a show with Tom Peck, who is a county board supervisor and is the secretary of the aviation committee. He shared a lot of things with us during that show.
Absolutely, and the direction that they're hoping things will go, or at least certainly he's hoping that they will go. I think that serving your country is obviously the highest and most honorable thing that you can do. And I, obviously being a former elected official, I felt as though I served my country, my community in the fashion that I could. But I also know, as a working woman, a mom, a politician, you can't do it all and do it all well. Something gives. You either better hope that you have the most understanding husband in the world and that doesn't mind cooking supper because you're not there.
Right.
Somebody to help you out with your kids. I mean, we need to understand that there is a limit. This multitasking thing, this whole new lingo of all of us being so multitask is a lot of crap. That's why we're dropping dead from heart attacks. In fairness to the constituents, because really, as an elected official, they need to come first. And if you cannot put them first, then you shouldn't be an elected official. In fairness to these people's constituents, they needed to take a step back. And certainly, coming back stating that the reason you had to leave was to serve your country will do nothing but endear you to the very people that you will represent.
And not only that, but here again, if you've done a good job, people are going to reelect you anyway. I feel.
And really, what are you trying to hang on to so desperately? Is it the power? Is it the prestige of being an elected official locally? I mean, does it fluff up your resume? I guess what I'm trying to understand is that if you're not here doing the work, what is it that you're hanging on to?
Well, just a moment ago you said you cannot do it all. In this case, when you're half a continent or half a world away, you can't do it at all.
Correct. And certainly do the people in
serving your district.
Well, and
so
yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm sure we're going to be very unpopular because there will be people that will say, oh my God, this poor guy was called up and he's serving his country, and do you mean to tell me that he should lose his job because there's other people on the job line waiting for jobs?
But he's not losing his full-time job. This is a job where he is the only player for that district.
Right.
He's the only employee basically for that district. And again, as I said at the outset of this particular segment, I am extremely grateful to Mr. Hurt, to Mr. Nielsen, to every single male and female who has ever served in our armed forces in any capacity. Truly I am. I come from a military family. But I just think that if that is your commitment at that point in time, then you need to, for the greater good of that commitment and for the greater good of your country, the small country here, for the greater good of your district, you need to
well, there's a reason that when you're called up and shipped away, your total focus is there because that's where you're needed. Just like in politics, your focus is your district because that's where you're needed. Bottom line, Cheryl, you and I are going to be unpopular with a lot of people about this particular point because I think that they're going to view it as, like you said, being ungrateful. I'm not ungrateful.
Or unpatriotic.
Well, and I'll risk that too. But, you can call me a lot of things. None of those are befitting of the situation. But
this is about fairness.
Well, it's about equity and representation. And what I find interesting about that is the very people we were talking earlier in a different segment about Mr. Hurt being one of the people who was interested in limiting the size of the county board.
Oh,
And-
on the show with Tom Peck.
Correct.
Yes.
And working locally with state legislator Greg Underheim and some other folks. And I find it interesting that Mike Hurt would be so interested in limiting the size of the board because there's too many people and it becomes too arduous and too many representatives, and we could bring this down and be smaller and people could be more accountable. That would mean that somebody like Mike Hurt could not represent a larger constituency any better than he does the smaller one when he's absent for 7 to 12 months.
Well, correct. You can't represent anyone.
So isn't
when
that
you're
kind
away.
of hypocritical? I mean, people will argue that 38 members of a county board is too many. I argue that since when does numbers of representation, making sure that we have as many voices, getting as many opinions, is a bad thing? And not having a voice at all is the worst. So, you know, I guess I find it somewhat hypocritical for Mike to be jumping on this bandwagon of limiting the size and moving to a legislative decree that says we're going to go ahead and do this. And yet he's going to be a guy that's literally missing in action, and his constituency will have no voice.
Or would not have had a voice had he
No
gone,
accountability.
and will not have one
Right.
if he does
if he
have
goes.
to go.
So, yeah. Well, there we go. Popularity is highly overrated anyway.
Well, here's a good thing. Well, some people may not think it's a good thing.
I thought it's all been pretty good so far.
We are, again, taping this on October 9th. But the smoking ban, proposed smoking ban, for the city of Oshkosh restaurants was defeated in late August. And it really was kind of a nail biter the way the votes went down. And Councilwoman Shirley Maddox was the swing vote in that. And I must tell you, you know, for someone who sat and listened to every word, you almost had to listen to every word of her little speech, if you will, her explanation as to why she was voting against the ban. I found it spellbinding. I mean, I was literally glued to the television listening to every word Mrs. Maddox said. It was probably, and I've covered a lot of government meetings in my career as a reporter, and I have heard some very impassioned speeches and explanations of why someone's voting the way they are. This explanation that Mrs. Maddox gave was one of the best, well-balanced, and most impassioned speeches, and I use that for lack of a better word, that I have heard in a very long time. It was, and it was fair. It was fair because we all know that she personally wanted the ban. But she gave a very well thought out, well-founded reason why she was not going to vote for it.
I thought she did a great job. And as you know, Shirley and I have had very serious political, you know,
You've locked horns.
We've been polar opposites. I have a great deal of respect for anyone that will sit up there and do the job. I don't have to personally like them as an individual, but I do, from a professional standpoint, I respect people who make the commitment. I think there are people who make greater commitments than others. I think that is pretty evident in certain people. I haven't always appreciated Shirley's commentary. Sometimes I thought it was somewhat disjointed and not well thought out, and sometimes I wondered if she was really on the same item as some of the rest of us. And in fairness to her, you know, I was looking at that from a person who'd been there for 11 years. You've got to remember that when you're the new kid on the block, there are a lot of nerves that come with that. The cameras are in your face, and you've got an audience full of people and constituents who are angry with you. It's, you know, you got, you know, one
Plus,
group
you're not
loves
up to
you.
speed on everything.
Well, one group loves you, the other group's,
Yeah.
you know, ready to rip your heart out. You learn certain things on the fly that have just come to your attention, or the administration just brings them up. Here's an addendum item, and you're reading them as you go. And quite frankly, in my opinion, if you're a decent council member, you come in there with an open mind so that when people are making their pitch to you, so to speak, and again, that's for lack of better terminology,
Right.
but when they're expressing their views and their concerns and their desires, that you haven't walked in with such a closed mind and your opinion derived from only this information that you've gotten from staff, that you can absorb and be compassionate. And so you have to be somewhat flexible. You know, you got to be kind of a fluid individual. With all of that going on, remember, you're watching to see when you can talk and press the button and ask the questions and trying to be, cognizant of everything that's going on. So in fairness to her, I was looking at this as an 11-year veteran to a lady that was a teacher, and I'm thinking, gee, I expected her to be a better orator, or, sometimes her thoughts seemed a little disjointed. And it was frustrating for me because I had all these great expectations, which I'm sure I frustrated the hell out of a lot of people because they'd wish I'd shut up. So, and I'm telling you what my personal thoughts were, because when I watched this, and obviously I didn't want to see the smoking ban go through. So I had a personal bias, a prejudice about this. I thought Mr. Harris handled this in a very sneaky, underhanded, deplorable fashion. He talked to certain people from the Tavern and Restaurant League and made promises that these things would be talked about in a more collaborative manner.
And then failed to do it.
And never delivered on any of that. That just is really crappy stuff to do to people, because that makes every person that's ever served or will serve suspect to people. You can't trust them.
Well, and I think that was one of the reasons why Mrs. Maddox voted the way she voted, because she said, and this word is a quote, she said that the drafters of it were, in her opinion, quote, unquote, negligent.
Grossly negligent, I think.
Grossly negligent,
yes.
Okay.
And I do have a mind to remember certain quotes that hang in there pretty. And what I liked about this is it's just what you said, Cheryl. It was so well thought out, and it was, you could tell that she had taken a great deal of time.
Yes.
Had really thought things through. I knew personally, just from watching the body language and listening to how this was all put together, she would have, as you said, liked to have supported some restrictions, but that there was not everyone was at the table to have a discussion about what those restrictions should contain was offensive to her on a lot of levels. And whatever my feelings may or may not have been or may be in the future, this woman did she felt every word that she was saying. And I was drawn to her. And like I said, not having, a lot of expectation at that point, I was absolutely, wow, that was great.
It was.
It was great. Yeah. And I called her the next day.
I did too.
And I said, I'm sure I'm probably the last person that you would ever expect to hear from. And I said, but that's exactly why I'm calling you, is because I have told you very vigorously when I thought you've done it wrong. And I'm very blunt. I mean, people sometimes take that rude or harsh or boorish or whatever, dictionary adaptation they want to tag to me. But I am a very direct person. I don't think anybody ever has to wonder where they stand with me. And I don't mean that to be hurtful. It's just, it's my personality to not BS. So I wanted her to know when I thought she had done it right. Not because she would care one way or the other what I thought.
Right.
It's just because I've had these, verbal discussions and disagreements that have been vehement with her. I wanted her to know that when she did it right, you don't hear that enough anyway.
Right.
Especially from somebody who's been kind of like your polar opposite. She was incredibly gracious and kind and tired. Really tired.
Right.
And people were giving her a hard time. And but I couldn't agree with you more. I was very, very, very impressed. You know, I wish she would actually write down more of her thoughts, because I think she actually does a really good job when they're all kind of right in front of her.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And on the same topic, there's a couple other things that I had jotted down here that I wanted to talk about. Kudos also have to go to Jeff's on Rugby restaurant, because since the smoking ban was defeated, and it only took them a day or so, I think, after the defeat came down, they took a leadership role in this, and they are going to offer totally smoke-free nights.
Thursdays, isn't it? Thursday
I believe
nights?
Thursdays is one.
And they're going to offer like all the specials that they offer like all week. They're going to make those available so that people can't come back and say, well, you know, you have your prime rib on Fridays instead of Thursdays or whatever.
They already, and they have had for a number of years, totally smoke-free dining, but even the bar area on these particular occasions will be totally smoke-free. And, you know, what a wonderful leadership role. And Phil and Lisa Levine, the owners.
Nice people. Very nice people.
They were guests on the show prior to the vote on the ban. And they were talking about why they did not want to see it pass. But they've taken a very strong leadership role here.
And you know what's interesting about this is I had the pleasure of talking with Phil and Lisa on camera and off. And, you know, these people have gotten beaten up pretty good. And a lot of it is, you know, these cowardly folks that will call you on the phone or send you a letter or
Unsigned.
a note. Unsigned. Yeah. And really, I tried to give them like a little humor, you know, a little... You know, I hate to say that I give advice, because certainly, you know, I'm no Will Rogers, and certainly, you know, have not done enough things right to be able to, you know, warrant the people seeking my advice. But I guess what I tried to do is throw a little humor at them, because when you're an average Joe Blow and you've never been subjected to that element of people, and that element, I mean the cowards of the world. You know, they've got all these opinions and they're so willing to espouse them in writing or over the phone where they can be anonymous. But if you get them eyeball to eyeball, you know, they don't have the stones they were born with or the backbone the good Lord gave them, and they, you know, they're like cream cheese on a hot day, you know. So when I was talking to these folks, you know, it was very bothersome to them that people went to that degree to be that vicious and hateful.
It was horrible. Calling them murderers.
Yeah, I mean,
because they allow smoking in there.
Yeah, it was.
That's ridiculous. And those people who did that,
shame on you.
They should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, that is, first of all, every person who comes in there is not necessarily going to drop over dead from secondhand smoke. So to call them murderers, you know,
it's just asinine.
Well, it's asinine. I think it's slanderous.
So everybody who drives a car probably is a murderer too, because I hate to tell you, you're discharging, you know, poisons into the atmosphere. But my point is that, you know, they were so taken back that there was actually, you know, people who do this, and I said, oh, my Lord, I wish I would have kept all of the you know, voracious writers that used to. And you know what's really funny is when I had gone before the council and expressed my views, as not as eloquently as most, but when I expressed my views about the no smoking, it was really interesting, because my husband said, Melanie, you've got mail. And my husband and I have kind of like this ongoing thing, because it's actually kind of funny. You always know when the hate mail is coming, because it's in a plain white envelope, no return address, and they don't even lick the envelope. It's a self-stick envelope, so you can't do DNA on it, I think. I think that's what they're worried about. So you open it up, and I'm like, okay, $5 says there's no signature. He says, I'm not taking that back, because it's the same envelope we get all the time. You open it up, you look at the front, you turn it over, there's no signature, you throw it right in the crapper.
But see, now, there are some times when people may not want to sign their name. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they fear some kind of retribution.
What am I going to do to them?
Well, not necessarily from you, but I mean, with city council members, or the Open Records Act thing. That is a big thing. Now, email and mail and what have you, going to elected officials, that falls under the Open Records Act, and anybody can get their hands on it. You don't have to necessarily be with the media or another government agency. Anybody can get their hands on this stuff. And I think that is cause, in some respects, for concern, why some people may not want to sign their names to some things.
Cool.
So, well, yeah, you could do that, but maybe you just don't want your identity known.
Then whatever you have to say is of no consequence.
Well, no, see, I do disagree with that, but I
honestly,
think it's real chicken to call someone a murderer or whatever they had to say to you and not sign their name. I think that's a different. See, I think those are different things.
Honest to God, I used to pore over this stuff and think, oh, how could anybody hate me that much? They don't even know me. And I mean, some of the things in there that people would put were just so unbelievably awful.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And now I just do this. Save yourself a stamp. Really, because I look at it like, you may not like what I have to say, but by God, when I walk up to the council chambers, I identify myself by name, by my address, give my opinions, and I walk away. You know who I am, you know what I stand for, and if you think you're going to send me some anonymous letter that's going to pound the snot out of me because you don't have the stones to get up and do the same thing, I got no respect for you. Keep it. Do yourself a favor. Keep your powder dry and keep it to yourself. You may need it another day.
Well, again, with respect to Jeff's on Rugby, Phil and Lisa Levine, the proprietors over there,
doing a great job. Good
thumbs
for them.
up and kudos.
They are really
This is a
neat
good
people.
way of finding a compromise that everyone can live with. And yet, on the other hand, then we have Kathy Propp,
who is disgusting,
from Breathe Free. Well, that's not mincing
No,
any words.
that
From
was
Breathe
disgusting.
Free Oshkosh, who was it in the same article?
Yeah.
Who said,
we're not done yet.
Yeah, it's, and this is a quote, I made certain that this was a quote, it's a start, but by no means the end, or something to that effect, since that's the word for the night. The upshot of the whole thing is, about her statements, is that she's apparently unwilling to accept a compromise here at all in this area. She wants it her way, all the way, or nothing.
Well, they're like
period.
rabid dogs. I mean, if you're a rabid dog and you bite somebody, it's not just enough to bite their arm, you want to tear it off and then feed it to them. See, what I don't like about this whole scenario is it's not enough that you educate people about the ills of cigarette smoke. That's not enough anymore. Now we've got to control an environment, not just your environment, but other people's environments, because you now know what's best for all of us based on your world or your view of the world, wherever you may be flying in from. But now when people have actually said, you know what, we were listening and we actually understand what you're talking about, and we want to absorb some of that, and we want to be flexible. But you have to understand there's market forces and there's things that you have to understand. Let's come to a middle here. And then you get a woman like this who says, oh, no. We're going to referendum and we're going to shut you all down. And it's a very threatening environment. That serves no useful purpose for any dialogue in the future at any time. How many people do you think are going to trust Mark Harris, Kathy Propp, Don Kuchera, and Breathe Free Oshkosh the next time this comes up? And
I don't know, but I think that Breathe Free Oshkosh needs to really try and
breath.
work. Well, they don't want to because there's smoke everywhere.
Yeah.
I think that they need to take the high road here, and instead of saying it's our way or no way, they need to take the high road, be willing to compromise.
Or here's an idea: start your own restaurant and make it smoke-free, and then
make it whatever you want.
You've got a built-in clientele right here. Knock yourselves out.
Yeah.
Welcome to America 101.
Some other kudos that I want to give.
Yes.
The university, as when we tape this, has been back in session for about a month or so. Last year, and I live not far from the college district. Last year, as you know, I had a horrendous time with these students, making noise and banging garbage cans and yelling and screaming from Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, from starting like 9:30, 10:30 at night until when the bars close.
Yeah.
And sometimes even beyond. It was terrible. It got to the point where I was videotaping these yahoos as they paraded down the street with their little antics. Because, you know, Mel, I had night after night after night of this. Sleep deprivation, a couple hours sleep a night, kicking garbage cans over. This is asinine behavior. And you know, I got together with the university people and the police department, and Councilwoman Maddox was there, and you know, we got the garbage night changed so that they weren't able to kick over the garbage nights or the garbage cans on Thursday nights, that kind of thing, and the police really stepped up to the plate and did a lot of good things, undercover officers, things like that. Because it's not just the noise. The police, one of the, I believe she's a sergeant, but you know, she said that last school year was one of the worst that they had ever seen for batteries and things like that. You know, kids getting drunk and just beating the crap out of each other after the bars close or when the bars are still open, what have you. And so the police really this year, I mean, hats off to the Oshkosh PD, and if they are continuing to work with the university police, you know, kudos to them too, because the problems, while they still exist on a small level, it is nowhere near like what it was last year. And, you know, thanks to Dave Potek and Public Works for, you know, it took a while to redo this whole thing, but for changing the garbage night, I mean, it is so nice to not have to be out in the yard at 2:45 in the morning in my slippers picking up garbage because these punks, these drunken idiots have ripped open or kicked over garbage and kind of, you know,
Now,
had
if we
it
could get your
strewn all over
parking
the
problems taken care of, that'd be just
well,
about
parking
perfect.
problems. Now, you know, some of those have improved in my neighborhood too, but I'll tell you, there's some real serious parking problems in different parts of the city. And one of them is on 9th Street, and it goes from about Rugby all the way down to Sawyer. People parking all over their lawns with for sale signs in their cars.
It's not just there. I was just over by my mom's house not too long ago, and they're starting to park cars on the front lawn that, you know, for sale, and it looks like a junkyard.
Well, it's terrible.
Yeah.
You know, and I know.
By the way, we do have ordinances against that.
Well, well, that's just the point. And you know, I know because I serve on a city commission here that you know, they are looking at that. They're trying to get it taken care of. You know, there's one where Jefferson Street dead ends into a cul-de-sac right almost by Harrison in that general area.
Okay.
It's there are two houses there, one that has had a boat and trailer for sale sitting on their terrace for months, and nothing has been done about it to date. I know that they're starting to try and look into it here, but nothing has been done to date. And their next door neighbor has had one of these portable basketball hoops sitting on their terrace for months because it's a cul-de-sac, and so I'm sure the kids are using it as like a basketball court. I don't have any problem with kids playing basketball, or adults either for that matter, but you know, this is a terrace. It's owned by the city, and there are ordinances about putting things in the terrace. You know what I think the city should do? That crap is sitting on the terrace, I think, on their garbage day. A garbage truck should hook up the trailer and the boat and haul it away and take it to the landfill because it's sitting on the terrace and it's garbage day. Haul it away. And the basketball
Maybe we
hoop
could get
too.
some money for recyclables. You know, we're always trying to generate new revenue sources. Scrap metal.
A couple other things real quickly because we're running out of time, I know. Last time when we did another Viewpoint segment, we talked about the gas station at the corner of Murdoch and Bowen Street, and it had been overrun with weeds and grass and so forth. Whoever was responsible for cleaning that up, thank you very much. That is a tremendous improvement. I don't know if, you know, the city had a role in that, or the owner, or the real
Squeaky
estate.
wheel gets the oil, baby.
The realtor. I don't know. And also the new apartment complex in the Marion Road and Dawes Avenue area. They have since pulled their rental-related signs out of the terrace. We had talked about that.
Maybe now you could say something about maybe getting something done over at Mercy Hospital, the old Mercy Hospital site.
What's?
It looks like crap. Those poor neighbors
Oh,
over
you
there.
got some calls from those folks,
Oh
didn't
my
you?
Lord! Oh my Lord! And I'm not even on the council. I haven't been on for over a year, and people are calling, jumping up and down, screaming about it. It's ridiculous. And then Ben Ganther gets in the paper and says, "Well, gee, it's kind of hard to get a lawnmower up against a fence. Have you ever heard of a weed whacker?"
I have one thing real quick yet, and I don't know if we're going to be able to zoom in on this, but this is a booklet that, and if we can't, that's fine. This is a booklet that the county has just put out. It's the Local Emergency Planning Committee. And this is a residential guide to emergency preparedness. And it's got these little flip pages in here with all kinds of information for different types of events. And these were mailed to every single house in the city. Some apartment buildings, though, may not have, some of the residents in the apartment buildings may not have gotten one of these. But this is what it looks like. If for some reason you did not get one or you want another one, you just simply need to call 236-7463. Again, that number is 236-7463. And it's got a little hole up here that you can tack it up on your bulletin board. It's a
You get
really
excited about the darnest stuff.
But this is a good thing
It
to
is. I
have.
mean, it
really
talks
is.
about chemical emergencies.
Yeah,
and
it's wonderful, and kudos to the local emergency planning committee for putting that thing together.
wonderful.
We got a couple minutes left. I'm sorry. Did you have anything? I've kind of just.
Hey, it's your turn. I think I last time. No, actually, the one thing that I did want to talk about really quickly is Dennis McHugh, who serves as the president of the school board, has announced that he is not going to be running for re-election for the school board. And I certainly, after 15 years, can understand, that you come to a period of time when, you bid a fair adieu,
Right.
And but I have found Dennis to be probably one of the most committed, caring, dedicated, and just absolutely fantastic representatives this community has ever been blessed with. And this will leave a huge gaping hole
Tremendous.
for those of us taxpayers who have counted on him so heavily, and probably sometimes too heavily. We have expected him to carry an awfully heavy burden. And Dennis, congratulations.
thank you.
We love you dearly.
And in the about 30 seconds or 45 seconds we have left, this is October 9th when we're taping this. It was exactly 1 year ago today that our very first On Oshkosh show aired. And so happy birthday to us.
Yay!
Happy anniversary to us, whatever. And we just want to thank all of you for your support, your kind words, your input, everything.
Even when you beat us up.
Even when you beat us up during the past year. And many thanks also to our crew.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've got
All
one
those
of the
people back
hardest
there.
working crews in the community access, cable access, television arena. They're wonderful. We could not do it without each and every one of you.
They make us look good. They just wish they could make us sound better.
Yes. And so, again, thank you all very, very much. And that's going to do it for this time. Take care. We'll see you next time. Keep your eye on us until then, because we've got our eye on Oshkosh.